Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Alchemy Experience podcast. I am here with Penny Chiasson today. We are fast friends, or we have met on the interwebs, which has been sort of the story of my life lately, just meeting some really cool people through various different platforms that are doing really cool, remarkable things in this world. And so Penny and I have had the pleasure of chatting a couple times now, but she is a board certified hypnotist, the creator of Identity Matrix Method, which just makes my heart pitter patter because I love those words. She helps seekers and aspiring hypnotists understand how identity actually changes and why insight alone isn't enough. Ooh, speaking of my soul, her work bridges neuroscience, subconscious transformation, and ethical hypnosis training for those called to create real impact. What amazing work that you are doing. All of this is so much that I do inside the alchemy experience, minus the hypnotism stuff, but I'm so fascinated and excited to dive in with you about this because not only do you practice this, but also you train others to do this, which is so remarkable. Transformation is my jam, rooted in really identity work. And I'm just fascinated with the work you're doing and really grateful that we have connected. So tell my peeps on my side of the world a little bit more about you and what you do, because that's just like a sliver. And yeah, share with us.
Well, Erin, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I totally get the identity is the language and the transformation. If you were to rewind back 20 years ago, I would ask, what are you even talking about? Do you know, understand what I'm saying? It's
Oh, yeah,
just,
same, same. Yeah, it'd
it's
be like,
one
you're
of those
crazy.
things. Yeah, I was always pretty much rooted in science. I was a nurse for 10 years, then I became a nurse anesthetist. And it was in my work as a nurse anesthetist putting together a program for the nurses around acute pain management in the hospital. I was looking deeper into what are the complementary methods we could help give people relief when it's not safe to administer more narcotics.
Mm.
And I was floored when I came across the medical research and the psychology research around hypnosis and pain management. So that's kind of the key that unlocked the door to say, wait a minute, what do you mean that just by influencing your mind, you cannot feel pain? So, that kind of kicked around in my mind for a few years. It was before the days that Google is what it is today and social media. And I would poke around and the interest would come and go. And then I found a training that was led by a retired nurse anesthetist. And he had used this when he was in the Navy practicing. And I thought, okay, here's somebody who can like help me understand what's actually happening. So his course was the gateway drug, if you will, into the whole path that I've taken, because in that training through, I'm a very spiritual person. It was pure divine. I wasn't then, but it was pure divine intervention that he called me up to be the volunteer. I'm doing air fingers quotes if you're listening, the volunteer for him to demonstrate glove analgesia, which is where he guided me into deep hypnosis, gave me suggestions that my hand was numb, and then clamped a surgical clamp shut on the back of my hand. And I knew it should have hurt because we do that to test spinals in surgery. The surgeons would do that to make sure our spinals were effective when that was a type of anesthesia. And I knew it was supposed to hurt and I didn't feel a thing. And I left that day and I told my husband, by the way, when I get home, I'm going to start a hypnosis practice. He's like, what is going on with you? Um, but to get to the really good stuff, fast forward several years, we moved halfway across the country. I shut my practice down for a year or two, and I started to have an extreme misalignment of values.
Mm.
The healthcare system was changing. I was, unbeknownst to me, because even when you do this work, you can know, and we can be in self deception. But the hypnosis I had done was for medical reasons up until that point. I had a high functioning anxiety and depression that was due to unresolved grief and anger that
Mm,
I didn't recognize it had happened in 2014. Um, and I hit the wall at 100 miles an hour. Perimenopause hit. I was in a
mhm,
job that I just felt so misaligned with. The values weren't there. And so, and the political environment at the time of 2017, I was a news junkie also. All of
mhm,
that was like gasoline on a fire that was going inside of me. And I very quickly spiraled one day. I just had an event. I quickly spiraled and actually became suicidal. I pulled into the parking lot, the parking garage at the hospital. The entire 1 hour drive, I was fighting this internal battle and I was fighting to live. Just for clarity, if you've never been in that place, it was extremely, extremely painful. It was like somebody ripping your heart out,
mhm,
but I was fighting to live. And when I pulled into the parking garage, the thought went through my mind, well, if you get into the OR, you can get to the fentanyl and propofol, and by the time anybody finds you, you're done. And that scared me to the point I had tried calling two or three friends. Everybody was busy. My
mhm,
husband was working. And I went inside, I locked myself into a locker room, and I called my nurse practitioner who was helping me. And they said, "Oh, she's not available. She can call you back tomorrow." And I said, "I don't have till tomorrow. I
mhm,
don't have till tomorrow." And I told them what was happening. So she happened to know my chief of nurse anesthesia, and they helped me to get the help I needed in that moment because I didn't trust myself. And the counseling was great. The person was excellent. But once I realized it was anger, like when everything bubbled up, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I need. So I got permission to work with my mentor to do hypnosis,
mhm.
to do a very targeted approach on the anger. And my life literally, it was like taking the static on a TV and just, it was gone. And that changed my focus in what I was doing with hypnosis. I was like, if I can work with people before they get to that point,
Mhm.
just when they're agitated, when their emotions are not people who are in a clinical state, but get to people before they've spiraled to the point that they have no choice but to get help from somebody else. If I could help people be happy, if I could help people understand that you can love yourself and you can accept yourself and everything's going to be okay. I'm like, if I could help one person, then it's worth my effort. So I reopened my hypnosis practice, and it's been a bit of a journey to get to where I am today, but I would never, I can't see myself ever going back to healthcare again. I actually walked away from a job in 2019, October 2019, to do this full time.
I love it. What a journey. What a complete trajectory that you had to go through to get to the other side, right? You were in this sort of void stage where you're like your higher self knew where you were supposed to be and you were just in almost fighting it, right?
And well, when I closed my hypnosis practice in Connecticut to move to Mississippi, I didn't want to move to Mississippi because I didn't want to close the practice. I knew I had found the thing I was supposed to do,
Mm,
even though at the time, but then I also look at it this way. I very spiritual. I apprentice with a shaman. And one of the things that I understand is we experience the things that we have to experience to obtain the wisdom and growth that we have to help people in the capacity that we're meant to help them. If
mhm,
that had not happened to me, I would not have had the depth of understanding and perspective to know that people are not their emotions.
mhm.
We're not our emotions. And not everything that we're experiencing in life and the way that we're coping and the behaviors that we engage in, the people pleasing and the self-doubt and the overthinking, all of those things, that's our mind trying to keep us out of pain.
Yes.
And it can be
Amen.
big pain or it can be little pain. And this is what I really work to drill into my students in the training program, because everybody has this big notion that trauma has to be rape, physical abuse,
Yep.
living with alcoholic parents. The mind, that identity is formed, that foundation is laid so early in life when we have no context, no words to explain what we're feeling. It could be something so tiny that just gives us a different perception of life
Mhm.
that it carries over as we experience life. And then one day we realize there's something there that we can't put our finger on, that we have a great life. We don't understand why we're not happy.
Mhm.
Why can't I be happy? And that's what was going on with me in 2017. I was starting to get angry with myself. I
Mhm.
have everything I thought I ever wanted, a great paying job, a home, and 50 acres of land that's paid for. Why am I not happy?
Mhm.
What is going on with me? And I thought there was something wrong with me. And it wasn't. I was just carrying around stuff that needed to be unpacked. And I say that because I think it's human nature. And you work with people all the time who are unpacking things, but I think it's human nature to think that we're alone
Mhm. Yeah.
because everybody puts on the mask and nobody talks about it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's why I'm happy to be here today to share with you, because
People
there's
need to
always
hear it.
someone else going through what we're going through, even if it's
Yeah.
not identical.
Yes, people need to hear it. Well, thank you for sharing your story and what you went through to get here, and that you've taken that. And, I wrote something the other day about awareness and how awareness is beautiful. But it's what we do with that awareness. It's taking action from that, right? And so I
Yeah.
think there's so many people just walking through life not even aware. But then once they become aware, they think, oh, I'm healed. It's like, no, we're aware of it. Now we have to take action to build something from it, to make change, to evolve, and some people won't take it to that level. And it's not just doing the work on ourselves, but then taking that gift and sharing it with the world. And you have done that, which is amazing. And I think for some, this can feel very woo. It can feel very like, I do a lot of the spiritual work. I do a lot of the grounding, a lot of the what people would call woo, right? Because I'm so traditional in I'm a social worker by trade. So I'm so traditional in the psychological, the, logistical things that we try to talk ourselves through, like the mindset work of like changing your mind and just the actual tangible thing. But there's a part of it that we don't talk about, and that's the energy work, that's the spiritual work, and you are bringing that into your practice, and that is huge. People need that right now, more than ever. I think COVID threw us into a spiral of things, and we needed it then. But now that we're so far from removed from it, years away, it's like we got stuck in that
Yeah.
part. So I think this is so great that you've gotten your practice back to a place where you're like, let's integrate this for people, not just talk therapy, but how can we, if needed, implement the hypnosis part? You've done it yourself, so you are a living, breathing advocate for it, and you know what it's like. So I think that is so aligned, so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think it's a beautiful addition. I mean, I get people who come to me who have worked with therapists a long time, and they're like, you know what, there's something we just can't get at. There's something else. Go find a hypnotist, go find a hypnotherapist. And a lot of times it's just you talked about energy, it's a nervous system response that is caught in that implicit memory.
Yeah.
And so you can reframe the meaning that the brain has put on that feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe the meaning wasn't put on it in the moment, but after feeling that feeling more than once, the brain puts a meaning on it later. And that's just how we contextualize it. But I think that probably some of the most important teachings that I give to my students is, even if your client is not spiritual, anytime we help someone align to the true nature of themselves, to bring their thoughts, their stories, their habits, their behaviors in line with what brings them happiness and joy, that is spiritual work. So you don't have to go around talking about the spirituality on your sleeve. You don't have to wear it on your sleeve, but to know that it's still spiritual work. So when I work with clients or students, I meet people where they are,
Yeah.
and that's just a part of my journey with my shaman, my mentor, is meeting people where they are and not judging them for where they are in the process,
Hmm.
and holding that deep respect for people, and not holding judgment for clients or students in
Amazing.
that way.
Amazing. That's such a beautiful way to look at it. It's just, it's what we do is we meet people where they're at and we support them in their growth. I love this. So not only are you practicing this with clients one-on-one, but you're also teaching this to those that are interested in, you're an instructor on learning the trade of hypnosis, and you have a process of doing that. Can you share with us? There might be people that are I have a lot of social workers, coaches, and counselors, different types of people in the help and healing field that listen and that are, in my world and watch what I do. And they might be thinking, huh, this is something I might consider integrating into my practice. Tell us a little bit more about your process if they wanted to learn that from you, or at least just see what that's about.
Yeah, sure. So the training is called the Elite Hypno Pro. And the foundation of the training is actually a standardized curriculum that was created by someone who was ABD, their PhD. So I became certified to train in that curriculum that allows us to use that emotional resonance to release erroneous fears, misperceptions, or allow people to process out valid feelings that never got processed and there's forgiveness work built in. But people began to ask me a few years ago, how are you getting the results that you get? Because I was in a large group coaching program, and this is just relevant to how it came about. I was asked to be a referral hypnotist in that program. They had never had anybody that they referred to before. And
Mm.
so when people would reach out for consults, they'd say, oh, did you see I posted X, Y, and Z in the group? And I would say, no, I'm not a stalker in the group. I'm a participant. I just happen to get referrals. Like I'm not paid by them or anything. So I would go back and look at the things that they shared. We would do our work together, and then they would still be in the group. And sometimes they would repeat the program 2 or 3 times after. And I could see whose results stuck
Mm.
and where people would get caught back up in the same cycle. So instead of doing just hypnosis, I
Mhm.
began to look at this concept of identity and say, okay, people come to me because they want one thing fixed, but they don't realize it's like spokes on a wheel.
Yeah.
There are several things connected. So I created what I call the identity matrix method, where it's almost like motivational interviewing,
Hmm.
and you go through and you find that desired state and you have that current state, and I look for the patterns. So it takes time for people to develop the pattern recognition,
Yeah.
but you get that start, and then you can start to see the patterns and find the belief, the thought process that is the most common thread that will collapse. And that's where I start. And so I teach that to my students now. And also, I bring in some neuroscience. That basic curriculum doesn't include the neuroscience, the kids working with pregnant women, stress, and those kinds of things, because not everyone needs that emotionally resonant process to get the result. I'm not a die-hard purist. It always has to be done this way. So it's just an integrative part of how I teach what I do.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. And for those of you listening, whether it's when this comes out in the next couple of weeks here, or months down the line, I have people, watch this and, it could be months away from when we first created this, and they're like, wow, I really need this. And I, again, like you, believe that there's divine timing. And for those that are listening well later, it's just the right time for you to say, wow, this is something I might need. Whether it's you reach out to Penny to get involved in process of her therapeutic practice with integration of hypnosis, or you're like, I have my own practice and I really want to learn how to do this, because this could be an added bonus for people that come to me. So whatever regard you might find yourself in, be sure to follow Penny, get to know her. Penny, where is the best place people can connect with you on the social platforms?
Yeah, it's probably over on Instagram at penny.chason. I'm on LinkedIn some. It's hit or miss when I'm there. The same with Facebook. And I just want to say that I've had a lot of therapists counselors and academics come through the training because they appreciate that I understand what it means to go through a credentialing process
Mhm.
as a nurse anesthetist. So it takes the element of, oh my God, is this going to be too woo? It takes that fear out of it in terms of the training. So I just wanted to add that. And thank you very much
Yeah,
for letting me
I
share.
think, yeah, I think that's amazing because it's funny. I just had a client that was in here with me, and they're in school to become a speech pathologist, and so you know, um, we were talking about just credentialing and the process and how social work, and she wasn't aware that how similar it is, how you have to, get your master's, then you have to get your LMSW, then you have to do 2,000 hours of clinical work. She's like, that's a lot. I'm like, yes, it is. And then you have to sit for your clinical exam, right? Like it's such a process. And I think for us logistical people that have worked so hard for our credentials to hear you say it's not just the woo of, hey, I'm going to just teach you this thing. There is some of that spiritual piece, but there's also the logistical, like you understand what it takes to get credentialed and you know the process and you make it flexible and simple so that people can come through and get what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to stand in the OR and the doctors would look at me. So I had to bring the receipts. I would
Yeah.
quote the research and the authors. And so I'm available to support people in that capacity.
I love that. You bring those seats. Amen. So, thank you so much for being here. I love to end these sessions with any nugget of information, a word, a phrase, a little brief thing that you want people to leave with today. What would that be?
This is something that's near and dear to my heart. A deep subconscious forgiveness is
Mm.
the holy grail of internal peace.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's beautiful.
Forgiveness is the holy grail of internal peace.
Amazing. Write it on a t-shirt, right?
I've thought about doing that. I've thought
That's right.
about doing that
Yes, I
for
love
about
that.
8 years now. I've thought about
Yes,
it.
yes, I love it. Well, thank you for being here today, sharing all your wisdom and expertise, and absolutely the highest regard for your service. And for those of you listening, be sure to follow Penny. I will put all of the ways to get a hold of her in the show notes so you guys can do that. And we will catch you next time. Until then, go light the world on fire, everyone. Thanks.